Hello, boys and girls. Following on from yesterday's Exponential Money Collapso, we have today's Exponential Money Collapso. And I think we're getting somewhere. And we're getting to an important pointer towards where we are now. But I don't think it's anything really to do with exponential. Okay. So I'll go into this by reading Collapso's answer to my question in there, and to get a flavour of what we're dealing with here. So start with the Bank of Mystic, which I think is an excellent idea. Create a 5 mystic note. Here's a 5 mystic note. Right. Loan the 5 mystic note to your neighbour. All right, you can borrow it. After the appropriate amount of time for interest to be due, start going to your neighbours and start demanding that he pay you 6 mystics with six of these, as opposed to the 5 that I lent. And that's obviously the principal, the 5 plus 1, which is the interest. The debt issued money thing is that simple and that broken. So, okay. One of these hand up jobs, get it into the screen, hand up. My math in American, or maths in English, is shocking. I stopped being good at it at about the age of 13. So, when it comes to anything mathematical, I either really have to try very hard to understand them or to work it out, or I don't bother. So anything to do with that sort of thing, I stab away at a calculator for ages, or just understand that I can't get it right. But I can't still see any exponential in this. What we have is a mild compounding problem, because let's just have it in modern day. If I go to the store and buy a new coat on a credit card, and it's one of these grotty credit cards that are going to hit me with big interest, that even the credit card with big interest is not going to get to exponential. I'm not going to end up owing 100 million money on it, and next year 200 million money, and then the next year after that 400 million money on my coat purchase. It's just not going to happen, is it? In reality. And this is what we must deal with, reality. And this is why banks have been doing this sort of thing. The Bank of Mystic and the Bank of everybody else have been doing it for hundreds of years, and nothing has really happened. And we've got to scratch our heads and say, well, if it's all exponential and is inevitably going to blow up, why has it waited hundreds of years and is going to do it now? Which is very good of it, because it'd be good for the viewing figures of Over the Peak, but I don't think it is, because it's just not exponential. My coat purchase is not going to go into the 200 million, 400 million category. 800 million. It's just not, is it? Or even bigger purchases, a car. I'm never going to get to paying hundreds and thousands of millions, exponentially going to trillions on a car purchase, or even a house purchase. It's just not going to happen. Somewhere between the purchase and getting out of mild compounding or getting into serious compounding, is nowhere near exponential. One of the parties is going to draw back. The bank's going to reproduce, whatever the word is, the car or the house. I'll get away with the coat, but it'll probably write the debt off or make me bankrupt, or I have to go bankrupt and the debt's torn up or something like that. In reality, in real life, it doesn't happen. Okay, and that's why it isn't going to happen and doesn't happen. And isn't going to happen now to make the Over the Peak viewing figures go mad. And I think it could be. I've had a little think why people have got this in their head. And I'm not saying Collapso's got it in his head like this. If you do look at the Chris Martinson crash course video, I think There definitely is in there a stadium, a football stadium or whatever, and somebody's chained right up at the top in the bleacher seats, and you do the compounding, going exponential thing, where you're putting water in, then double the amount of water, double the amount of water, and just before the time, it's 12 o'clock or whatever, and 1 minute to 12, it's only half full or something, and then it comes on and really fills up and drowns you within the rush in the last microseconds. There's that, and there's this meme that goes round which could quite well be true depending which way you look at it, that the dollar has lost 97% of its value or something like that since because it's always since the Fed was started. We had banks before the Fed, but not central bank, of course. But since the Fed, 1913, the dollar's lost 97% of its value or something. So I think people's minds link these two things together and think, we're right at the end, and this last end bit's just going to go slurp like this, and we're all going to get drowned. But of course, the things just aren't linked up. Okay, now I think that should do it. So we do have... I'll even throw out mild. We have a compounding problem with the monetary system, which will never go exponential because that's just not practical. Right. How to go? Okay, I'll have one little stab at an Austrian thing, which I've tried to stop doing, but because Austrian oversimplicity just doesn't cut it in the modern world. But I'll give it a go. I lend 5 mystics, 5 of these, 5 mystics to somebody to go and build a fishing boat. They build a fishing boat and then are much more efficient, and then they can pay somebody in whatever they can. I don't know how the money gets there. They can pay somebody to make the nets for them, and they can afford to eat 2 suppers and have more children and all that sort of stuff. The idea is that lending money, let's say in the past, somewhere between landing on a desert island and 1956, the lent money, the made up from nowhere, 5 mystic monies, but normally lent on collateral. Somebody has had to actually hollow out something or build something or make something of worth that I, as Mystic Bank, take as collateral. But I lend the money out. But the idea is that this money kind of increases itself while it's out there. It does productive things. It goes towards production, increasing the size of the economy. Now, what we certainly absolutely do have, and Chris Martenson is absolutely brilliant at presenting this, is the problem that all these monies have been put out since 52, 45, whatever it was, with lots of cheap oil out there and lots of people who are feeling good about themselves, that, they've sorted the war problems out, they're never going to have war problems again, and we can build a great community and have lots of open, brilliant ideas for different things, and the economy has grown and grown and grown. And really, the paying back of 5 and pay back 1, say it's a year, 20% interest has been a doddle. What we do have, most certainly now, over the last 20, 30 years, and this is what I often bash on about, is that these monies have been lent out not to get fishing boats or factories, but to get bidding up the price of houses and things like that, which is totally unproductive, and doesn't enable the economy to circulate all these various lendings of mystic monies round the economy, to make everybody more capable of paying back their loans, because as the money circulates, it changes from hand to hand to hand many times in a year, and everyone feels richer and more capable of paying things back. And the whole economy has the idea, it grew and grew, and it did grow and grow in reality. But what we have had for the last 25, 30 years is people borrowing lots of mystic notes to build houses. And as long as people were borrowing, and even bidding up the price of housing, and then the price of, the money was just getting kind of diverted through a house and into a bank and not doing anything productive. As long as people kept doing it and the money was flying out of banks and into everybody's hands, there was plenty of money to pay these compound interest things back. But the main thing is that now it is different, that the money is not being has not been put to productive use, and it is not backed by any extra productive industrial output or any sort of output, because it's gone into non-productive projects, which are only profitable, bankable projects if people, it's a Ponzi scheme, if people keep paying the money in. Now that, without a doubt, is a problem. And as soon as a Ponzi scheme finishes, that's the end of it. But it's not the coming to the end of an exponential problem. It's not really the compounding thing that's the problem. It's not the interest thing the problem, really, at all. It's not even interest that's the problem. It doesn't matter if we know now, even at low interest, it's compounding a little, it's growing slightly, but it isn't even that. We haven't invested enough in productive economies that we can even pay back the principal, let alone any interest, because it's been mal-invested. But what I'll do to make this a bit more constructive, because we've had one lot on Collapso, but I'd like to talk more about this. But as long as we do start dropping back from exponential, we can go into compound, I think. But I think now we have officially dropped exponential, and we might have a compound problem, but we don't have an exponential problem. But it is a very interesting subject, and it gets us, I think, to the main fact, which is misallocation of resources. And made-up money is resources. I linked to a Financial Times article. I've been reading all the comments, and there are lots of comments. It mentions Michael Hudson in the article, which is pretty wild for the Financial Times. It's called Debt Relief, A Time for Forgiveness by Martin Sandbu. So I'll link to that below probably. And we've got two things we can talk about in comments if we want to. We can go on with what has been my reply to Collapso and the compounding problem, and where I think it has led us. And now we have a great big decision to make about, we can't even pay these principals back. So what are we going to do? And the article is, I don't think it's up to much, the article, but it's worth reading as a comment generating article, because there have been an awful lot of comments. And if you happen to be having lots of time free at the moment, read through the comments. But it really shows that there's a huge problem coming up about now, what do we do with these mystic money debts? What will happen when people can't pay? And if they can't, it's a Michael Hudson favourite, when they can't, anything that can't be paid won't be paid. When they won't be paying, what's going to happen? And can it be preempted? Can the governments, and it would have to be the governments, get ahead of this thing and put things in place to say, look, we're going to have a certain amount of debt forgiveness on this, or we're just going to get stuck in a Japanese-style rut, or whatever it might be. There are quite a few possibilities that are generated from that. And I'll leave it with you. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So we've got the compounding problem, which knocks onto now the malinvestment problem, and what we have now, which is going to be either a mass default problem or a suggested jubilee, which is Hudson and Steve Keen's idea of, not that the jubilee is a good idea, but trying to squeeze the last drops out of the people who can't afford it is certainly a very bad idea, and we must have a better idea. Okay, leave it there. Leave it with you. Bye.